Wow, you make a pretty good Superman.
Superman's boring. I'm Raiden.
They ask you how you are, and you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it.
They call me Superman. Beat tall hoes in a single bound. I'm single now. Got no ring on his finger now.
So if you followed me for a while, then you might have heard me mention that I don't like the CW Arrowverse shows. I didn't care for them when they were considered good, like the first 2 seasons of Arrow and the Flash, so I definitely don't like how they've been for the last 5 years or so. Not to mention, it's pretty hard for me to find time to watch several episodes of a series, so that's why I typically stick to movies. But last year I decided to check out the new Superman and Lois show on the CW. I watched the 2-episode series premiere, and I was actually impressed. I thought it was pretty solid and a big step above anything else on the CW. I stuck with it week to week for about 5 episodes before stopping. With the season wrapping up back in August, and season 2 premiering soon, I decided to take some time and finally catch up on it, and I gotta say, I enjoyed it. Now, this isn't a perfect show. There are a few restrictions that it has that really hold it back from being really great, and a few things that the show itself does that I'm not the biggest fan of, but it does avoid several pitfalls that other CW shows fall victim to, and it stands really tall amongst the rest. Before I go any further, I would like to mention that I will be mentioning some spoilers. This won't be a deep dive into the show, but I will be mentioning several reveals with characters and the plot. So there's your warning. So if you haven't seen the show, I'll give you a brief rundown of what it's about. So basically the idea is Superman and Lois moved to Smallville to raise their 2 sons, Jonathan and Jordan. They're both 14, and one of them, Jordan, starts developing powers, which influenced their decision to move to Smallville. Clark then tells his sons that he's Superman, and now he must balance being a father and being the world's protector. All the while, this strange man appeared out of nowhere and wants to kill him. And Lois is investigating this shady billionaire named Morgan Edge, who has an interest in Smallville. So you got a lot of things going on here between the strange man looking to kill Superman, Morgan Edge, Jordan developing powers, and of course, some family drama. And I think it balances it all pretty well. When the series premieres, it makes you think that the stranger is going to be the main conflict, but what actually ends up happening is a few episodes in, the attention shifts to Morgan Edge instead, and you have the stranger operating in the background for a few episodes, before they eventually connect the 2 plots in a pretty interesting way, all the while taking both these characters into a very interesting direction. I'll touch on some of that stuff in a bit, but first I'm going to talk about the show's production value, because it's a big step up from other shows on the network. It's very clear they wanted things to look more cinematic, so they went about it by changing the aspect ratio and also improving the lighting, and several times per episode there are some really good looking shots. To put it bluntly, it looks like they actually gave a shit. So right off the bat, the look of this show is just much better. Although the CGI and special effects leave a bit to be desired. This was a concern of mine when I first heard about the show. I was wondering how good can they make the action, the powers, and the flying look on a TV budget, a CW TV budget more specifically. And it varies from pretty decent to kinda bad, but it never gets as bad as shows like Supergirl or The Flash. Overall, I think it's passable. But what it lacks in special effects, it makes up for with its story and characters. There are more than a few interesting subplots and several twists that kept me hooked. The writing overall was surprisingly good. Nothing really felt ham-fisted or cringy, and I feel conflicts and story threads were paced pretty well, at least for most of the season. We'll circle back around to this later. Now, as far as characters go, Tyler Hoechlin as Superman is great. He does a good job at being a small town guy and a father, but when he's in this suit, I think he's a pretty great Superman, so no complaints here. Lois was a bit shaky in the beginning, but once the Morgan Edge plot took focus, she definitely had more time to shine, and was much better than she was in the first couple episodes. Now, as for the sons, Jonathan and Jordan, I think they're alright. To be honest, I cared less about the stuff involving them than I did about the big main plot involving Superman and Lois. Although I will say that the sons are much better during the second half of this season than the first. For the first couple episodes, they kind of annoyed me because they felt very whiny, which I guess makes sense because they're being forced to move from Metropolis to now Smallville, and one of them is developing powers, so that's a whole another bag of issues. But for Jonathan in particular, I felt like they made him pretty unlikable, but halfway through this season, they definitely course corrected and he's much better in the second half. So by the end, I did end up liking them. And the last 2 characters I want to mention are the Stranger and Morgan Edge. And this is where we get into some spoiler stuff here, because a lot of the plot revolves around these 2. The Stranger, who you find out is John Henry Irons, is actually my favorite character. Not only because I like his badass suit, but because you slowly learn more things about him as things progress. And the way they reveal small bits of information, along with a few twists, made his character and his backstory really interesting. So in the beginning you think he's Lex Luthor, and then it shows glimpses about where he's from. But then you learn who he actually is, and you learn more about his past life before the events of the first episode. I don't want to spoil anything else for you, because I find everything revolving around him to be very intriguing. But I will say that he's given a very strong motivation for why he wants to kill Superman. He was my favorite character, and it was a really cool take on Steel. And finally there's Morgan Edge. At first I thought he was pretty boring, because he was just a billionaire. What could they do to make him interesting? Well, it turns out quite a bit. Similar to John Henry Irons, you're given small tidbits of information about him and his goals. Then you're given a few twists to mix things up. For starters, you learn that he's after X-Kryptonite, a material that will let him put the consciousness of Kryptonians into humans. Then you learn that he himself is from Krypton, and the reason why he wants to do this is so that he can have a whole army of Kryptonians to overthrow humanity, and as a way to bring back his extinct race. Also, it's then revealed that he's actually Superman's long-lost brother. Okay, that last twist I'm not the biggest fan of and thought it was kind of unnecessary, but everything else about him I like. And that's what I think the show does best. It's good at giving you small reveals, leading to bigger plot points and twists. It keeps things interesting from episode to episode, and makes you want to see what happens next. Another thing I think it handles really well is the family aspect, mainly the drama involving them. It never drops down to boring melodrama, except for maybe 2 or 3 times. And it's usually involving the sons Jonathan and Jordan. But what the show does well is that instead of letting these small petty things carry on from episode to episode, it actually resolves them within the episode so it doesn't drag it out. It has characters actually talk to each other and try to discuss the issue, instead of letting it build up. Although admittedly, some of these things I would prefer just not to see because I think it's kind of dumb. Like Jordan overhears Jonathan talking to a girl he likes, and so he gets jealous and confronts him about it. But then by the end of the episode, it's all resolved. Even with the twist of one of them having super hearing, it still felt pretty generic and cliche. So I guess it's better to see it for just 1 episode as opposed to having it drag out for 3. But besides those few times, it doesn't rely on melodrama to pad out the episodes, and instead thinks of more creative ways to have family conflict. Now, all that is great, but there's one issue I have with this series, and I knew it was going to happen at some point. It eventually hits a point where it feels like it's dragging on for a bit too long. There are 15 episodes, each 40 to 50 minutes long, and I think the first 10 to 11 episodes are pretty tight, well-structured, and well-paced. The narrative is strong and keeps things interesting. You get interesting reveals and twists with the characters and plot, and I stayed engaged the whole time. But then right after the big showdown with Morgan Edge, it spends a few episodes on the town recovering from everything. You see people get mad at the DOD for sticking around Smallville, they get mad at Lana and Kyle for backing Morgan Edge, you see them thinking about moving because everyone in town hates them, all the while Morgan Edge is plotting Plan B while he's locked up, and after a few episodes of that, Edge escapes and then you have the real finale. It felt like things dragged on a bit too long here. They could have just saved the whole town recovering and hating Kyle and Lana stuff for the beginning of season 2, or at least not have it last as long as it did. With it being 15 episodes, I feel like they could have cut out several things, not only in the final episodes, but in a few other spots in the series, and made it a much tighter, cohesive 12-episode season. Not to mention with less episodes, they could funnel that money from the budget back into the episodes they did make, so they can make them look as good as possible. It just felt like they hit the climax of the series, but kept going for a bit too long, before having another big climax. So all in all, I really like this show. I think it's the best thing that CW has made in almost a decade. And I think the best way I can put it is this comment that I saw a while ago. They said when compared to other shows on the same network, it's great. But when compared to other shows on bigger networks, it's alright. The limitations of its budget are very clear when it tries to have these nice big action set pieces, but it can't quite pull them off. So sometimes it comes out looking underwhelming or a bit goofy. With the recent news that the CW is now up for sale, I think what they should do is move the series to HBO Max. They should up the budget per episode and reduce the amount of episodes to have a very tight, concise narrative. Because I personally would prefer a great 10 to 11 episode season as opposed to a good or just okay 15, 16 episode season. But I am looking forward to season 2 and seeing where they take it. I am very curious of where the story is going to go now, and hopefully they maintain the quality they established in the first season and avoid the melodrama and cliches that the CW network has been known for. There's actually a channel by the name of Nerdy Before It Was Cool, and he made a video talking about why the CW shows are getting worse. And in it he lists several issues wrong with the network and the way they go about handling shows. And basically Superman and Lois does the exact opposite of everything in that video, which is one of the main reasons why the show is this good. I'll leave a link down below for you to check out that video. So overall, Superman and Lois is a good show. Easy, one of the best things on the CW network. And that's gonna do for the video. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, go and drop a like on it. And leave a comment, let me know, what do you think about Superman and Lois? Is it good? Is it great? Is it the best thing that CW has ever made? Leave a comment, let me know. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.
I'm not gay, but damn, you're good looking, bro.
You don't have to be gay to appreciate a man's beauty.
Nah, bro, I'd fuck you.
Okay, never mind.